In a quaint little town nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling lake, lived a man named Mr. Crumble. He owned the most popular bakery in town, famous for its delicious pies. People from neighboring towns would come just to get a slice of his world-famous apple pie. Now Mr. Crumble took great pride in his baking. Every morning he would wake up before sunrise, put on his old but comfortable brown apron and start baking. The smell of cinnamon, butter, and fresh fruit would waft through the town, making everyone's mouth water and their day just a little bit sweeter. One day, a mischievous raccoon named Ricky, who lived in a tree behind the bakery, smelled the delicious aroma wafting from Mr. Crumbly's bakery. His tummy rumbled. He couldn't help it. He had to get a slice of that pie. But how? Ricky was too afraid to enter the bakery during the day. There were so many people, and he knew Mr. Crumble was very protective of his pies. So Ricky waited until nightfall when the bakery was closed and everyone had gone home. Then he started his heist. He tiptoed past the locked doors and peeked inside. It was pitch black, but Ricky could still see a freshly baked pie cooling on the windowsill. It was an apple pie, just like the one his mother used to make. His mouth watered as he planned his move. He would grab the pie and run back to his tree hole before Mr. Crumble could stop him. But just as Ricky was about to make his move, he heard the sound of footsteps. Someone was coming. Thinking quickly, Ricky grabbed a chef's hat and apron that hung on a hook nearby and put them on. Then he stood on a chair and pretended to be dusting pie tins. When the footsteps got closer, he turned around and said, "Who's there?" The door opened and Mr. Crumble walked in. He was holding a tray of pies. "Who are you?" he asked, puzzled by the sight of a raccoon wearing his apron and dusting his shelves. "I'm, Ricky the baker," Ricky stammered, trying to think of a good excuse. "I was just, checking on the pies," he lied. Mr. Crumble raised an eyebrow, but instead of calling the raccoon out, he decided to play along. "Well, Ricky the baker, why don't you help me make another pie?" he said with a wink. Ricky had no choice but to agree. He followed Mr. Crumble's instructions, mixing ingredients and rolling out dough. To his surprise, he found that he actually enjoyed baking. And as they worked side by side, Mr. Crumble told Ricky stories about his life and how he learned to bake from his grandmother. By the end of the night, they had made a dozen pies together. Mr. Crumble smiled at Ricky and said, "You know, Ricky, you're not a bad baker. How about you come by and help me out sometimes?" Ricky grinned. He knew he wouldn't be able to steal Mr. Crumble's pies, but maybe he could get a slice honestly. "Sure, Mr. Crumble, that sounds great," he said, feeling a little sheepish. And that's exactly what happened. From that day on, Ricky the raccoon became Ricky the baker, and he and Mr. Crumble became the best of friends, baking pies and sharing laughs together. The townspeople loved the new addition to the bakery. They would often see Ricky scampering around the kitchen, his tail swishing happily, and whenever he wasn't around, they could spot him up in his tree hole munching on a pie, the crumbs on his whiskers